Hello students, welcome to my live teaching learning session of MMPC003 Business Environment. In today's session, we will cover the remaining portion of Unit 5, Block 2, which is Financial System, and Unit 6, Industrial Policy Framework. All these two units we will cover in today's session. In previous session, we have discussed about financial system of the Indian economy. You know that in India, there is a vast financial system. Here, financial institutions, financial market, financial framework, so many systems, financial institutions, financial intermediaries, all these things are included in Indian financial system. And Indian financial system is broadly categorized into two parts. One is capital market and other is money market. Capital market is that market which provide long-term loans facilities, and money market provide short-term funds, short-term financial facilities for the business organizations. And industrial policy framework, in this unit, industrial policy, how many industrial policies made in Indian economy, and why industrial policy we need to make, and what are the main objectives of different industrial policies which are made by government time to time, like 1948, 1956, 1977, 1980s, 1991. So many industrial policies have launched by the government to improve the manufacturing sector and to increase the industrial production and productivity level. So in today's session, we will discuss about whole industrial policies framework and the remaining part of the financial system. So let us start from this topic in role of RBI in inflation control. You know that RBI is the apex institution of monetary authority, and RBI play a very important role because RBI can control money supply and control credit creation process. Credit creation is the main function of commercial banks, but credit controlling is the main function of Reserve Bank of India. RBI has monopoly power of issuing paper currency, coins, notes, etc. Only 1 rupee note is issued by Ministry of Finance, Government of India, and other paper currency, coins issued by Reserve Bank of India. RBI can increase money supply and can decrease money supply. It means RBI has full control over money supply, and RBI can control the situations of inflation and deflation of the economy. What is inflation? Inflation is a persistent and continuous rise in price level. When price rises continuously, that creates the problem of inflation. And inflation, there are so many types of inflation, like creeping inflation, mild inflation, walking inflation, running inflation, galloping inflation, hyperinflation. There are so many types of inflation. But mild inflation is good for the economy, Hyperinflation is bad for the economy, and walking, creeping is good, not very good, but good for the economy. And deflation is the situation when price falls continuously for the long time period. If we have to choose in between of inflation and deflation, one of this situation, so which one is best for the economy? Inflation is much better than deflation, but not hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is always bad in all the situations of the economy. Hyperinflation lowers the value of money and decrease the purchasing power of the money. You know that when price level increases, then value of money falls and purchasing power of the consumer will also fall. So inflation arises when the demand increases and there is a shortage of supply. There are two main policies in the hands of the Reserve Bank of India. One is monetary policy, which is made by Reserve Bank of India, and other is fiscal policy, which is made by Government of India. Monetary policy, it includes the interest rates. When the bank increases the interest rates, then there is a reduction in the borrowers' demand and people try to save more as the rate of interest has increased. And in fiscal policy, it is related to the direct taxes and government expenditures. When direct taxes increased and government spending decreases, then the disposable income of the country people decreases. Because one person expenditure is another person income. If government spend less money and impose more taxes on consumers, then purchasing power of the country people will reduce and hence the demand reduce. To decrease the demand level, we can control the situation of inflation because generally inflation arises when demand is more than supply. This is known as demand pull inflation. And one is cost push inflation. If cost of production increases, then price of the product will also increase, and in this case inflation occurs. So inflation may be there so many types: demand pull inflation, cost push inflation, creeping inflation, mild inflation. Mild inflation is that situation in which price rises very lowest rate, and walking inflation, running inflation, galloping inflation, and hyperinflation. And hyperinflation is very bad situation for all the economies. So whenever inflation occurs in the economy, government can control this inflation situation with the help of these two policies. One is monetary policy and other is fiscal policy. Monetary policy is made by Reserve Bank of India and fiscal policy is made by Government of India. And the tools of monetary policies are quantitative and qualitative, and fiscal policies tools are public revenue, public expenditure, public debt, and budget. These are the main tools of fiscal policy. And both the policies are complementary to each other, not the substitutable. If both works together, then they can achieve all the set targets very easily and control the situation of inflation also. Now next is, what are the instruments of credit control? There are two types of instruments which can control the credit creation process. And these two instruments are, one is qualitative and other is quantitative. Number one is quantitative. Quantitative, it is clear by its name. It can easily control the quantity or amount of the credit creation. In quantitative instruments of credit control, here we can take bank rate, open market operations, and cash reserve ratio, which is known as in short form CRR, and statutory liquidity ratio, which is called SLR, and repo rate and reverse repo rate. All these points are included in quantitative credit control instruments. And in qualitative credit control instruments, there are mainly four methods from which we can control credit creation process. One is selective credit control. Qualitative is also known as selective credit control measures. In this, margin requirements, rationing of the credit, moral suasion, and direct action. These are four qualitative instruments of credit control. Now we will explain all these points one by one. Now, first of all, what are the main objectives of credit control? What are the main purpose or objective or goal behind this credit control? The main purpose of credit control is to stabilize internal price level, to stabilize the rate of foreign exchange, to protect the outflow of gold, to control business cycles, to meet business needs, and to have growth and stability. It means if we want to achieve all these set targets, then we can achieve with the help of credit control policy which is adopted by Government of India. And there are two types of policies. One is monetary, which is made by RBI, and other is fiscal policy, which is made by Government of India. And the purpose or goal behind this credit control is to stabilize the price level of the country, to stabilize the rate of foreign exchange, to protect the outflow of gold, to control the business cycle situations like boom, recession, depression, recoveries. These are the four stages of business cycles. And to meet all business enterprises' needs and to have growth and stability. These are the main objectives of credit control. Now next is instruments of credit control. What are the various instruments to credit control? One is, you know that there are two types of instrument. One is quantitative and other is qualitative. In quantitative, we include bank rate, open market operation, CRR, cash reserve ratio, SLR, statutory liquidity ratio. Now, what is bank rate? Bank rate is that rate at which Reserve Bank of India provide loans and advance facilities to the commercial banks. If bank rate increases, then loan will become more expensive. In this case, commercial bank will take less loans from the RBI. When commercial bank will take less loan, then they can give less loan facility to the borrowers. In this case, purchasing power of the country people will fall, their demand will fall, and inflation will control. So to increase the bank rate by RBI can control the credit creation process. Next is open market operations. Open market operations means sale and purchase of securities. Securities means like shares, bonds, debentures. So if RBI can sell or purchase all these securities from public and from commercial banks. At the time of inflation, and if RBI wants to control the inflation situation, then RBI will sell these securities to the public or commercial banks. In this case, public will buy these securities like shares, bonds, debentures, which are paper title documents, which is known as financial investment. In this case, when people will buy these securities from the RBI, then the cash money from the people will go to RBI hands. So in this case, purchasing power of the country people will fall and their demand will also fall. It means if we want to control inflation, then we must have to control the purchasing power of the country people, and we have to decrease the demand of the country people, because there is an unbalanced mismatch between demand and supply. Demand is more and supply is less. And if we will equalize this demand and supply, then inflation and deflation, both problem will be solved. So in case of inflation, demand we have to control it. So how demand can control? By reducing the purchasing power of the country people. And it can be possible to reduce purchasing power of the country people by increasing the bank rate, by selling the securities uh, by RBI in an open market to the public or commercial banks. And third is CRR. CRR is very important thing. It can easily control credit creation process. What is CRR? CRR is cash reserve ratio. And cash reserve ratio is the minimum amount which every commercial bank has to keep with RBI. You know that commercial bank is the public bank and RBI is the bankers bank, government bank. So when public deposit their money in commercial banks, then each and every commercial bank has to keep some amount, fixed amount, and in fixed proportion of their deposited amount daily to the RBI. So this is known as CRR, minimum reserve or cash reserve, and the ratio is fixed by Reserve Bank of India. So it is the ratio of demand and time liabilities to be kept by all commercial banks with the central bank. And to increase this CRR, credit creation can be controlled. If CRR increases, credit creation will be less, and if CRR decreases, credit creation will be more. It means there is an inverse relationship between cash reserve ratio and credit creation. Now next is SLR. SLR is statutory liquidity ratio. Statutory liquidity ratio means that the percentage of demand and time liabilities to be invested in government approved securities. SLR is that ratio from which commercial banks keep money with them. And next is if SLR increases, credit creation will be less, and if SLR decreases, then credit creation will be more. In this case, credit creation process is, it means that credit creation depends upon CRR, SLR, open market operations, and bank rate. So what is repo rate? Repo and reverse repo. Repo means injection and reverse repo means absorption. So the rates at which the central bank borrows short-term money to and from banks. Repo rate is that rate at which commercial banks can take borrowings for the short, RBI can take borrowings from the commercial bank for the shorter time period, and the reverse repo rate, RBI can take loan from the commercial banks. At repo rate, RBI provide loans to the commercial bank, but reverse repo rate, at this rate, RBI can take loans from the commercial banks. So repo and reverse repo, it is clear by its name that repo rate is, reverse repo is the opposite of repo rate. At this repo rate is just same as bank rate. But the difference is that at bank rate, RBI provides loans and advance facilities to the commercial bank for the longer time period. But at this repo rate, RBI provides loans and advance facilities to the commercial bank for the shorter time period. But at reverse repo rate, RBI can take borrowings from the commercial banks. So this is the difference between repo and reverse repo rate. And all these are the credit control instruments of RBI, and all these points are included in quantitative methods of credit control. Now next is Credit instruments. What are the credit instruments? Credit instruments is the term used in the banking and financial world to describe in and time agreed upon that can be used as a currency. What are the credit instruments? Credit instruments are like checks, bank draft, bill of exchange, promissory notes, government bonds, treasury bills, traveler's check. All these are the credit instruments. By these instruments, financial system, financial markets, financial institutions can provide financial facilities to the borrowers. And these credit instruments are like checks. You know that check is the most popular instrument. It is an order drawn by a depositor on the bank to pay a certain amount of money which is deposited with the bank. And bank draft is another important instrument of credit used by banks on either its branch or the head office to send money from one place to another. Money sent through a bank draft is cheaper, convenient, and has less risk. And bill of exchange is it enables a seller of commodity to issue an order to a buyer to make the payment either to him or a person whose name and address is mentioned therein, either on the side of the bill or within a period of time which is specified therein. And promissory note, it is clear by its name, it's a promise which is promissory note is a written instrument and writing containing an unconditional undertaking signed by the maker to pay a certain amount of money only to or the order of certain person or the bearer of the instrument. And government bonds issued by the government, it's a type of certificate to the person who subscribes to these loans. Such certificates are called government bonds. Some of them are income tax free, and there is a rebate on these government bonds. And treasury bills are those bills which are issued by the government. They are issued in anticipation of the public revenues. So all these are known as credit instruments. Now next is qualitative and selective credit control methods. In this we know that there are 4 methods from which RBI can control credit creation process. One is regulation of margin requirement. Margin requirement is the amount contributed by buyer for the purpose for which he or she borrows. You know that when person or anybody can take loans or borrowings from the banks, then bank will keep some pledge or mortgage amount. When bank provides loans and advance facilities to the public, then bank will take definitely some mortgage and pledge amount. That is known as margin requirements. And high margin rates to prevent excessive use of credit to purchase or carry securities by speculators. So if margin requirement increases, then borrowing will decrease. Means public will take less loans from the commercial banks. In this case, their purchasing power will fall, demand will fall, and inflation will control. And low margin requirements can increase the excessive use of credit, and high margin rate can prevent excessive use of credit. Next is regulation of consumer credit. You know, there is a rationing system in food supply, same as if RBI make a rationing system of providing credit facilities to the borrowers. In this case, RBI can control inflation problem. So credit to consumers to buy durable consumers goods is consumer credit. If RBI fix uh, maximum quota of the credit, then borrowings will decrease and demand will also decrease, purchasing power will decrease, and inflation will control. And if there is no restriction, if there is no limit of the borrowings, the amount of borrowings, then credit will create more. Next is moral suasion. You know that RBI is the apex institution of monetary authority, and all the commercial banks must have to follow the policy which is made by Reserve Bank of India, monetary policy, and the instruments of monetary policy. If all commercial banks will support RBI's policy, then RBI can work very smoothly and can achieve all the set targets. So RBI put some morally pressure, not by giving any threat and giving any discouragement. RBI morally pressurize commercial banks to follow their policies, like monetary policies tools, to help or cooperate the Reserve Bank of India to control credit and inflation, to solve this inflation problem. And direct action is the action which is taken by the Reserve Bank of India against commercial banks. If any commercial bank will refuse to follow monetary policies, tools, or instruments, then RBI can take action against that bank. RBI can cancel the license of the commercial bank, and RBI can also merge that bank in another bank. So these are the qualitative or selective credit control instruments, in which you have studied about 4 points like margin requirements, next is rationing of the credit, next is moral suasion, and next is directive action. And in quantitative instruments of credit control, I have discussed with you that bank rate, open market operation, cash reserve ratio, and SLR, statutory liquidity ratio, and repo rate and reverse repo rate. So all these instruments can easily control credit creation process. So these are the main points of credit control which is used by Reserve Bank of India. Now next is, what is the difference between money and capital market? You know that capital market provide long-term financial facilities and money market provides short-term financial facilities. So capital market refers to stock market, which refers to trading in shares, bonds of companies of recognized stock exchange like SEBI. And the money market is a place of short-term lending and borrowing, typically within a year. It deals in short-term debt financing and investment. Anybody can make investment through a brokers. In capital market, anybody can make investment through a broker. And in case of money market, individual players cannot invest in money market as the value of investment is large. And in capital market, there is a high risk and high return is possible. And in money market, there is a more security. There is no such a high risk involved in money market. And in capital market, trading is through recognized stock exchange, and money market deals with transacted on phone or through electronic system. So this is the basic difference between money market and capital market. Now next is industrial policy. We have discussed about all financial systems which we cover in previous session, and discuss the remaining portion of the financial system, which is in your unit 5 block 2. Now we are starting here unit 6 industrial policy. Here we will discuss about the introduction of industrial policy, meaning of industrial policy, industrial policies which is launched by government from time to time, like 1948 to 1991. And what are its positive and negative impacts of industrial policy on industrial development? So all these topics we will cover in this session, which is in Block 2, Unit 6, Industrial Policy. Now, what is policy framework? Policy framework is a logical structure that is established to organize policy documentation into grouping and categories that make it easier for employees to find and understand the contents of various policy documents. So, policy framework is a logical structure which is organized or established by company that is established to organize policies documentation into grouping and different categories that make it easier for the employees who are working in an organization to find and understand the all contents of various policy documents. That is known as policy framework, and government has made some industrial policy frameworks in which industrial policy launched some instruments and targets and set targets for the achievement of industrial growth. Now, what is industrial policy? The industrial policy of a country sometimes denoted IP. IP is industrial policy. I refers to industrial, P refers to policy. So is its official strategic efforts to encourage the development and growth of part or all of the manufacturing sector as well as the other sectors of the economy. The government takes measures aimed at improving the competitiveness and capabilities of domestic firms and promoting structural transformations. A country's infrastructure like transportation, communication, and energy industry is a major part of the manufacturing sector that often has a key role in industrial policy. So, industrial policy means a policy of a country. It's a official strategy, strategical efforts to encourage the development and growth of the whole manufacturing or partially manufacturing sectors as well as the other sectors of the economy. Now, next is meaning of industrial policy. Industrial policy means those principles and activities which are pursued and performed to help industrialize a country. Industrial policy includes rules, regulations, principles, and procedures to regulate the industrial undertaking of a country in the desired direction in order to achieve broader objectives like industrial development, economic development, balanced regional development, increase in employment. Therefore, industrial policy is an instrument which helps to achieve all these set targets of the economy. And through industrial policy, the government decides that which industry should be allowed to grow or should be shrunk through subsidies, incentives, concessions, and taxes respectively. So government can easily control the growth of those industries which are creating pollution, which are not eco-friendly, which are not doing good business in domestic country. And through this industrial policy, government can put some restrictions, can put some heavy taxes on those industries who are not eco-friendly and who are hampering or who are giving a bad impact on the Indian economy, and government can provide subsidies, incentives, concessions to those industries which are helpful for the growth of the country. So industrial policy is really a very good policy which is definitely improve the manufacturing sector development, which improve the production level of the all manufacturing units. Now next is how the birth of industrial policy. What is the procedure behind the birth of industrial policy? In India, you know that at the time of independence, Indian economy was very stagnant economy, very underdeveloped economy, and Indian economy considered as a less developed country due to poor conditions of economy, problems of industrial sickness, when raw material is shortage in amount, then we need industrial policy to focus all these things and to improve the situations of the infrastructure facilities so that industrial development can be possible. So what are the reasons behind the birth of industrial policy? So the first reason is due to the poor condition of an economy, problems of industrial sickness, shortage of raw material, deficiency of capital, and bad industrial relations. These are some main causes which lie behind the birth of industrial policy. And industrial policy resolution, first industrial policy resolution IPR was issued on 6th April 1948, just after the independence. You know that India got independence in 15th August 1947, and 6th April 1948, first industrial policy resolution was passed or issued. It accepted both private and public sector. This policy was implemented for 8 years, and from here the planning era started in Indian economy from 1951 onwards. So these are some causes, like due to poor conditions of economy, problems of industrial sickness, shortage of raw material, deficiency of capital, and bad industrial relation are the main causes behind the birth of industrial policy. Now next is objectives of industrial policy. There are some major objectives for making this industrial policy. One is accelerating the overall rate of growth through industrialization, because we know that without development of the industrial sector, economy can't grow, because we know that in all countries, in each and every country, there are 3 sectors exist in all the whole countries of the world. One is primary sector, which is related with agriculture and its allied activities. Second is manufacturing sector, which produces goods and services by raw material. And third is service sector, in which we include banking, insurance, transportation, communication, all the services. And if we want to achieve higher growth rate of the country, then industrialization growth is very necessary. And at the time of independence, Indian economy was predominant on agriculture sector, and agriculture was the main sector of the Indian economy, and industrial development was very less. It means at that time, Indian economy considered as agriculture based economy, and most of the country people were engaged in agricultural activities at the time of independence. That's why we need industrial policy to improve the industrial development of the country at the time of independence. So expanding the industrial base in relation to industrialized needs of the country, generating more employment opportunities and reducing poverty. This is the main objective of industrial policy. Preventing monopolies and concentration of industrial power, creating competitive conditions and encouraging the growth of the entrepreneurship. These are the main reason behind this industrial policies introduction. And promoting balanced regional growth, balanced industrial development, promoting the linkages with other sectors of the economy, assisting small entrepreneurs, encouraging the growth of industrial research and development. These are the main objectives of industrial policies. Now, next is objectives of industrial policy. We can classify it in these points. The first objective of the industrial policy is rapid industrial growth. The industrial policy of Government of India is aimed at increasing the tempo of the industrial development. Second is balanced industrial development. The industrial policy is designed to correct the prevailing lopsided industrial structure. Lopsided means one-sided industrial structure. So industrial structure should be based on overall industrial policy, industrial development of the country, not only some part of the industrial development. And balanced regional growth it's a very important objective of the industrial policy. Industrial policy also aims to correct regional imbalances in industrial development. It is quite well known that some regions of the country are industrially well advanced and some are really very backward. So if we want to make balanced regional growth, then industrial policy should be framed like in this way so that we can achieve this set target. And solving the problem of unemployment, these are the main objectives of industrial policy. Now next is, what are the industrial policies tools? There are some tools which is used while making industrial policies like macroeconomic stability, foreign direct investment, skill development, and empowerment or affirmative actions, trade reforms and access, competition policies, industrial policies, encouraging small, medium, and large scale enterprises, micro, M means micro, other M means medium, S means small, micro, small, medium, and large enterprises, land reforms, and support innovation and research sector, research and development should be promoted. So these are the main tools of industrial policies which is used while making industrial policy. These tools are used by the policy makers. Next is industrial policy resolution. These are the different time period in which industrial policy resolution have passed. One is Industrial Policy Resolution of 1948. Next is Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956. Next is Industrial Policy Resolution of 1973. Industrial Policy Resolution of 1977. Then Industrial Policy Resolution, in short form we can say that IPR of 1980s and IPR of 1991, which is known as New Economic Policy or New Industrial Policy of Indian Economy 1991. So these are industrial policies resolution since independence to till now. Now next is Industrial Policy of 1948. The Government of India announced first industrial policy resolution on 6th April 1948, whereby both public and private sector were involved towards industrial development. Accordingly, the industries were divided into four broad categories. One is exclusively state monopoly. Second is state monopoly of for new units. It means, you know, that when India got independence in 1947, then India followed which economic system? Mixed economic system. And mixed economy is that economy in which both sectors like public and private both are coexist in it. So mixed economic culture, mixed economic system followed by each and every industrial policies resolution. But first of all, the first industrial policy which was launched in 1948 mixed uh, public and private sector both were involved during industrial development. In this first exclusively, first of all, some industries are put in state control, which is categorized in exclusively state monopoly category. Second is state monopoly for new units. Third is state regulation. And next is unregulated private enterprises. But at before 1991 time period, public sector was mainly dominant sector in the Indian economy and the role of private sector was very less. But at present situation is reversed. At present, private sector is playing very important role and public sector is playing less role in the economy. So the government of India launched first industrial policy resolution on April 6, 1948, and in this public sector play a very important role because industries were divided into four broad categories, but in this three categories belongs to state or government sector. Only one is related with private sector. It means the main dominant role played by public sector in this industrial policy. Exclusively state monopoly for new units, state regulation. So these three categories, the industries lie in these three categories were mainly based on public sector industries. And fourth is unregulated private enterprises, which is kept for private sector. Only one category is left for private sector. Rest of the others are in hand of government or state. Now in 1956 industrial policy resolution, this policy widened the scope of public sector. It classified industries into three main broad categories. In this first category, 17 industries comprised. These included railways, arms and ammunition, and iron and steel, and atomic energy, all are in state control. And the second category comprised 12 industries which were envisaged to be progressively state-owned, but private sector was expected to supplement the efforts of the state. And the remaining industries were kept in third category, contained all the remaining industries, and it was expected that private sector would intimate development of these industries, but they would open for state as well. Now next is Industrial Policy Resolution of 1977. In 1977 Industrial Policy Resolution, the government would promote the development of a system of linkages between large nuclear plants and satellite ancillaries to boost the development of small scale industries, and investment limit in the case of tiny means micro units was enhanced to rupees 2 lakh, or small units to rupees 20 lakh of, and the ancillaries to rupees 25 lakh at the time of 1977. A scheme of building buffer stocks of essential raw material for the small scale industries was introduced into operation through the small industrial development corporations in the states and the National Small Industries Corporation in the center. And industrial processes and technologies aimed at optimum utilization of energy or the exploitation of alternative source of energy would be given special assistance, including finance on concessional terms. So all these targets are set by government in which Industrial Policy Resolution 1977. In this industrial policy of 1977 mainly focuses on small scale industrial sector, micro and tiny industrial sector, and uh, provides some concessions and benefits to the small scale enterprises, and government promote some nuclear plants and satellite ancillaries. So all these things mainly focuses on small scale and tiny industries in this industrial policy resolution, because we know that small scale and cottage industries are very necessary for the Indian economy, because it provide more employment opportunities to the country people. It generate employment because it use less capital and more labor intensive technologies. Now next is industrial policy of 1980s. The industrial policy regularized 34 industries producing items not reserved for small scale industries and which had installed capacity in excess of licensed capacity. The industrial policy of 1980s made provision for the development of industries in backward areas and attain economic federalism through restructuring and location policy, introducing technological changes, providing infrastructural facilities to industrial sector, introduce special incentives for both small scale and cottage industries. In the light of energy crisis faced by India, the industrial policy of 1980 proposed search for other forms of energy. These included solar insulations, biogas, tidal and sea power energy, etc. The industrial policy of 1980 also proposed advanced technology and transfer of technology at national and international level to improve industrial competitiveness. This is the main aim of Industrial Policy Resolution of 1980. It also focuses on small scale and cottage industries to achieve the target of regional balanced development, and it can be possible if we launched industries in all the sectors of the economy, either developed sectors and underdeveloped sectors or backward regions, and to provide more incentives to small scale and cottage industries. And in case of energy crisis, government in this industrial policy, government proposed search for new and other forms of energy like solar insulation, biogas, tidal and sea power energy. And in this 1980s industrial policy, it proposed advanced technologies and transfer of technologies at both level, national level and international level, to improve industrial competitiveness. Now next is 1991 industrial policy, which is very important to understand, because this industrial policy at present is going on. It need to preserve the environment and ensure the efficient use of available resources. Government policy will be continuity with changes. So this is the very important policy 1991. This industrial policy of 1991, it was launched in July 24, 1991. Government is also committed to development and utilization of indigenous capabilities in technology and manufacturing, as well as its upgradation to world standard. Government will continue to pursue a sound policy framework encompassing encouragement of entrepreneurship, development of indigenous technology through investment in research and development, bringing in new technology, dismantling of the regulatory system, development of the capital markets, and increasing competitiveness for the benefit of the common man. In this industrial policy, government mainly followed LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalization, which is the main instruments of new economic policy. And in this industrial policy of July 24, 1991, mainly focuses on this policy to preserve the environment and ensure the efficient use of available resources. And in this, maintain sustained growth in productivity and gainful employment and attain international competitiveness. In pursuit of the above objectives, government have decided to take a series of initiatives in respect of the policies relating to the following areas. One is industrial licensing. In this industrial policy of July 1991, first of all, industrial licensing system modified, and it took some changes firstly 18 industries were compulsory to take license before their beginning, but in this 91 policy only 5 industries must have to take license. Rest of the other, they don't have any need to take license. Foreign investment. In previous policies, 40% foreign direct investment were permitted. But in this industrial policy of 1991, 51% FDI is permitted. For some industries, this limit is 74%, and rest of the other 100% FDI is permitted with automatic route without taking any permission from the government. It means government is at present providing more liberal atmosphere, more liberal opportunities for enhancing the industrial development. And foreign technological agreements also, government provide concessions and technical assistance and provide some subsidies and provide some imported technologies for the advancement of the industrial development or technically upgradation. Public sector policy at present, privatization play a very important role. In public hands, only 2 industries are kept. One is railway and other is atomic energy. Rest of the other industries are in hand of private sector. And MRTD Act, this is the Act of Monopolistic Restrictive Trade Practices Act, which was launched in 1969. It imposed restrictions on big industries to control the monopoly power and to control the concentration of economic power. At that time, only 100 crore rupees you can invest in your business enterprises, not more than that. But in 1991 policy, this act has been abolished. At present, Competition Act 2002 is going on. At present, government is not imposing any limit or any criteria for the investment of for big industries. It means at present government give freedom to invest whatever amount of money you can invest. You have capability to invest. You can easily invest in your business enterprises. There are no such limit like 100 crore, 200 crore. There is no such limit. But the limit of 100 crore amount is fixed in MRTP Act. In previous industrial policy, at present, this act has been abolished. And instead of this act, at present, which act is going on? 2002 Competition Act is going on. Now, next is industrial licensing. At present, first of all, industrial licensing abolished for all projects except a short list of 18 industries. But at present, only 5 industries are compulsory to take license, and this limit, 18 industries limit, has reduced to 5 only. At present, only 5 industries are necessary to take license. Rest of the other are no need to take license, and they can begin their industries without taking any license. And evolution of new economic policy 1991. What are the positive impacts of this industrial policy? This policy gives more emphasis on industrial development, research and development, technological advancement, and FDI. At present, only cigarette, hazards, chemical, pharmaceuticals, and some explosive uh, chemicals, cigarette, alcoholic drinks. These industries should take license before the starting of their industrial sector, but rest of the other no need to take any license. And this industrial policy abolished MRTP Act to give more advancement and to give more expansion of all the industrial sector. And bottlenecks created by the bureaucracy were struck down by this singular decision of the government. So this new economic policy and new industrial policy unshackled many of the provisions which acted as brakes on the growth of large private corporate sectors. Overall, relief in the dismantling of industrial licensing and regime of controls. Now, industrial policy of 1991 and pre-1991, there is a lots of difference in between of these two policies. 1991 policy provide more freedom, more advancement for the FDI sector. And impact of this industrial policy, overall we can say that the impact of this industrial policy is very good on the industrial development of the country. And we can conclude from the today's session that all the industrial policy definitely helps in the development of industrial growth and development of the country. Thank you.